Hey everyone, John Stenstrom here from the Cast and Spear podcast, and today we have a phenomenal guest. His name is Brad Thompson. He's one of the directors of the OC Spearos, and we cover a host of different topics, including some of the common misconceptions about spearfishing clubs. He talks a little bit about safety, some education and conservation work that he's doing with the club, and even how he got some of his guys to start eating kelp, which is a topic that I find fascinating after reading the Eat Like a Fish book. But let's get started. Please welcome Brad Thompson.
My name is Brad Thompson. I'm one of the 5 directors of the OC Spearos. I got into spearfishing a few years back. Actually, seriously got into it a few years back. My family is all from, my dad's side of the family is all from Hawaii. And so I spent a lot of time, snorkeling with this Hawaiian sling out there, just, grabbing stuff off the reef and not really understanding that I was spearfishing. I thought I was just getting dinner, but I didn't have a term to associate it with. And then that changed when I saw Terry Moss's book, the Guide to Blue Water Hunting, and I saw him, dragging that tuna up from the depths, and then I really started digging in to figure out, oh man, I need to do that. What is that? How is that guy grabbing a tuna from under the water? And I did it very haphazardly for the first year, sort of not really knowing what I was doing, wrong gear, wrong places, just struggling, not getting anything. And I ended up I found Petros at Spear America, and he sort of got me on the right path. Gear-wise, he was tough love. Still tough love. There was a lot of ball busting going on when I showed up the first time with, my falling apart 3.2 surf suit and my little tiny JBL gun, and he just, he ripped me to bits, and then, but in a good way, and got me going with gear, and then so. Once I had the right gear, I still didn't have the right places, so I was lacking a community. I didn't know who to dive with. I didn't know where to go, what to look for. And so I started asking him and then the rest of the crew at Spear America, what do I do about that? Can I dive with you guys? What do I do? I don't know where to go. Please point me to a place to go. And the first thing Petros did was he grabbed my phone and he opened Google Maps, and he dropped a couple pins on some of the, the more well-known places. And he says, just go there for a while, just get used to it. Try to understand what you're looking at with fish. And I come from a background of hunting, from, land hunting. And so I understand how to at least try to recognize how animals act, how they're relating with their environment. And so I was just sort of still failing, still not finding fish, but starting to get an idea of how the reef worked and how fish worked. And then pretty soon after that, he introduced me to OC Spearos and said, hey, you just go to a meeting. And I went to my first meeting, and, it was great. Everybody there was super nice. Everybody was accommodating. I'd found my community. So from there, it was sort of a parabolic shift upwards in my skill level. Now I had a group of people that I could dive with. Now I had a group of people that I could ask questions, and it really, really set me on a rapid course to being a lot more successful diving. Now it wasn't too long after that I ended up volunteering to be on the board, and the club is it's really had explosive growth over the past year or two, and that's sort of brought me to today.
So going back to when you just got started, were you diving, this is pre-OC Spearos, were you diving by yourself, or did you have a couple buddies that you would go with to these spots that Petros dropped the pins? How did that work out?
Yeah, so that actually brings me to sort of a theme that has now become one of the main tenets of the OC Spearos, and it's at safety. And the answer to the question is yes. The majority of the time I was diving by myself. I didn't know any better. One of the other sort of pivotal moments in my dive career was finding out about FII, because I was diving by myself, and I was getting more and more comfortable diving in the water. You know, I was hunting with, you know, no training, 30 to 50 foot range out in like Palos Verdes. And I still remember the day where I was out by myself and I was having just an awesome day diving. Like my dives felt good, breath hold felt good, felt like I was on top of the world, everything was great. And about halfway through the dive, I thought, I should not be this comfortable. I don't have any education. I'm just sort of doing trial and error. And I have a 14-year-old daughter, and I thought I really need to get some education to make sure that I know what I don't know now, know how to take care of myself, how to be safe, how to really do everything that I can to make this sport as safe as possible. And then I found out about FII, and I got my level 1. I got my advanced freedive safety. I'm currently working on getting my instructor certification, just because there are such simple things that you can learn to do to really make yourself exponentially safer that it's one of the messages I want to spread.
So I've never taken the FII stuff. I mean, I've only done the online one through the Ted Hardy program. So it's like I have some understanding, but I definitely want to go get the FII just to kind of feel a little bit more comfortable, because I kind of bottom out around like the high 40s on a good day. A lot of times when when you're going in Baja, you don't really even need to go that much deeper, but there's some cool stuff in Palos Verdes and whatnot that I want to go deeper eventually. What stuff what are some of the high level things that you learned during the FII stuff? Because safety is a big deal. I saved my buddy last year from a shallow water blackout at the rigs. So it's like, I get it. It's just the safety part is always hard because so many different factors. But what did you learn from FII?
But, you know, the cool thing about FII is that it sort of has two major themes that they teach. Like, there's a lot of information that's stuck in those 2 days, but they sort of it falls into two separate tracks. One of them is to make you a better diver, and the other one is to make you a safer diver. And as far as the better diver portion of it, you know, increasing your breath hold, increasing your depth, increasing your comfort, it's learning how to do proper breathing technique. So in practicing to become an instructor, I've taken the level 1 course 6, 8, 10 times now. I've lost track, just doing it over and over again to get repetitions and learn. And it's amazing to see, particularly you'll get groups of people like there's different types of people that'll take the class. You know, there's the Spearo that wants to get in there and be a better spear fisherman. There's maybe a recreational free diver that wants to, you know, be a better free diver. And then inevitably in every class, there's like the friend of one of those that's going along for support. And so you get this range of people who's either super comfortable in the water already or totally scared and like, I'm going to fail this class, but I don't care. I'm just here to support the person that I'm with. And I'll be damned if every single time, you know, they may not make the 20 meters and they may not make the 3-minute breath hold, but just by learning the proper breathing technique, they will substantially increase their skill from day 1, you know, moment 1 through the end of day 2. It's shocking how big of an increase that they can have over that time. And it all just boils down to learning how to properly understand your own biology and put the air in the correct places in your body to be most efficient using it. On top of that, it's like, okay, now that you know how to use the air properly, they'll teach you how to have correct form in the water so you have, you know, your most efficient use of energy. So you're not burning calories and burning oxygen more rapidly than you would need. And you start putting those things together, and next thing you know, a 3-minute static breath hold comes pretty easily. A 20-meter dive comes pretty easily. And that track of being a better diver is really, really an amazing thing for watching people go through. And I think it's awesome the way that Martin Stepanek is sort of formulated the curriculum, is that he's got that track of being a better diver. And that's what sort of brings people in to doing FII, that they want to be a better diver, and they know from other people that have done it that they will gain that. But at the same time, he's able to do the most important stuff, and that is how to be a safer diver. And all of it integrates together into, while you're learning to be a better diver, you intrinsically will become a safer diver as well when you put all the lessons together. It's just it's a brilliant course. Like the more times I take it, the more I can recognize and respect what a value it is to anybody. Like every person that I meet, one of the first questions in the world of spearfishing or freediving, the first question I'll ask them is, "Are you certified?" And if the answer is no, I just say, find a way to do it. You have to do it.
Do you have anyone that you recommend outside of yourself to learn under in SoCal?
For as far as an instructor goes?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm currently not certified. I'll be taking my test again in July. But there's several, and actually I think most of the Southern California, or at least the Orange County area instructors are OC Spearos. You've got Jeremy Calkins, Eric Jensen, Ryan Keene, Nathan, gosh, I can't, what is his last name? The photographer, Nathan. It'll come to me. He's up in LA. There's several of them. If you just go to freedivinstructorsinternational.com, you find them there.
Awesome. And then to give a little tidbit to the people who might not have the opportunity to like learn under one of these guys, what is the proper breath technique? I've heard of the belly, chest, shoulders, and then that's helped me a lot, but I don't know if it's something different.
Yeah, no, it's exactly that. It's you know, when I take the course with Martin, he always uses the metaphor of, you know, if you've ever looked at a baby laying on its back breathing, you don't see that baby chest breathing. You know, just naturally, biologically, you're belly breathing. And that's because the majority of the alveoli in your lungs are down low. The best gas transfer is going to happen down low in your lungs. So when you're breathing with your chest, you're not getting the air all the way down to where you're going to get the most air out of each breath. So really what it is, you know, you put your hand on your stomach and you watch yourself breathe in. You want to make sure that your chest isn't moving out. It's only your stomach moving out, and just practice that. And then, like you say, when you're talking about your chest and your shoulders, yeah, that's on when you're taking your big peak inhale before your dive. You fill your belly, then you fill your chest, and then you fill your shoulders, and then you make your dive, and you try to get the most volume in possible.
I think I remember back in elementary school when I stopped belly breathing. Yeah. when I tried to get that 6-pack, you know,
it's totally cultural, you know. It's
never did it again.
it's totally cultural. It's totally, you know, you're trying to be Superman standing with your chest puffed out. You know, men breathe through their chest, and it, you know, sure, great in culture, that's fine. If that's, you know, to make yourself feel tough, that's awesome. But if you want to free dive, it's the total wrong way of doing it.
Absolutely. So let's transition a little bit towards about the club itself, because I know there's probably a lot of misconceptions that a lot of new divers might have about a spearfishing club. There's some legacy clubs. I know OC Spearo is relatively a newer club in the scene, but you guys are just kind of like expanding like gangbusters with how many members you guys have. So what can you tell the newbie diver about, let's just start from the basics. So what is a spearfishing club, and why should they join one?
Yeah, so each club has its own culture, I would say. Like you said, there are the legacy clubs around here, and some of the oldest and most prolific clubs are here in Southern California. Really highly respected guys, really great guys. The difference that I think that I see in OC Spearos, and the reason that I'm really happy to be part of this club, is that we are open to everybody, every skill level. You know, we've got, you know, on the one end, we've got John Dornelis, you know, he's a member. So you've got, you know, tip of the top Spearo, all the way to somebody who maybe has never even been in the water, but just wants to sort of, God, I hate to use the cliche, dip your toe in. It's just too on the nose, but right. But wants to figure.
Dip the fin, bro. It's dip the fin.
Yeah, dip the fin in. But, you know, and we accept everybody in between. And, you know, at the beginning of every meeting that we always have a short session where we say, who's here for the first time? And the people raise their hand. We say, come on up. Let's meet you. Find out why you're here. They introduce themselves, say why they're there. And then when they go back down, we encourage everybody, look to your left, look to your right, introduce yourself. You've got a new dive partner here. And that happens at the beginning of every meeting. And you know, as a director, a lot of the members talk to me asking questions and stuff. And people are constantly, you know, thanking the club through me, like me, using me as a proxy, thanking me for giving them the opportunity to meet these people, to have everybody come together as a community, and without the judgmental mentality that I think is at a lot of the other clubs. Well, I wouldn't say a lot, but it does exist in the sport. There is a judgmental nature of, you know, hey noob, what are you doing? Get off my spot, you know, that type of stuff, or making fun of people for asking what they think is a stupid question. And that stuff just isn't, it's not that it isn't tolerated, it just doesn't exist in our club. It's not something that you're ever going to see. You know, we get people asking what they might think is a ridiculous question all the time, and it's just, hey, the only reason they're asking is they don't know. Let's just answer the question, and now they know, and now they're becoming a better diver and a better spear fisherman, and really pushing the sport forward.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought that the legacy clubs had kind of a sense of how it was back during my old frat days a little bit. Like you had to pledge, you had to go through a certain amount to kind of strut your stuff to show that you're committed. And then once you cross that threshold, you're open, you're welcomed with open arms, you're quote unquote a brother, you know, that kind of game. But just like how I liked that at that certain stage of my life, I thought it was really cool. But as I got older, I kind of gravitate more towards how you're approaching it with the OC Spearos, where it's like, at the end of the day, this is inherently a dangerous sport. It's not a lot of people in this sport, which can also be bad if, say, like outside regulations or bad public perception or whatever. So you kind of need numbers. And at the end of the day, it's like you can save somebody's life essentially by answering that one question, right?
Right.
So
yeah,
these things are important. Looking back as an older version of myself, not saying anything's bad with the legacy at all. I'm just saying like that's my.
It's different. It's just like it's cool. Each club has, like I said, they have their own culture, and each club, you know, cherishes their own culture, and we're fine with that. You know that we actually have people, and when they come to club meetings or when they reach out through Instagram, Facebook, email, whatever, and they say, hey, you know, tell me a bit about your club. I never put the hard press on join the club. It's come to a public meeting and just meet us. And, you know, if you like it, great. If you don't, look at some of the other clubs. Just be find a community, because it's so important to be in this sport, you know, to not do it alone. That's, in my opinion, the worst thing to do is to try to go and, you know, blaze your own path and figure it out on your own. You'll end up, you know, hurting yourself.
And there's plenty of stories about people who have hurt themselves. So it's not a laughing matter, or it's not going to happen to me kind of thing. You know, it might just happen even if you're skilled. So it's respectable. Is there anything in terms of mission that you guys might be doing that's a little bit different than, say, some of the other clubs, or maybe just inherently, like, what is the overarching mission of an OC Spearos organization? Because I know we talked a little bit about this offline, so I was hoping you kind of can shed some light on that, because I think it's really admirable.
Yeah, so our three like main driving goals are safety, education, and conservation. So we put safety first, because we really do. We push very hard, getting yourself educated on safety, following, you know, safe dive protocols, you know, never dive alone, one up, one down, you know, all that stuff. We really hammer in. We just recently, at the beginning of lobster season, had a gear talk, and it was all centered around, okay, there's all this stuff out there that seems cool, that you could have your Batman belt full of stuff, but really let's talk about the safe gear to have with you when you're lobster diving. You know, things like that. It's really important to us. Education, we really focus on, it goes, you know, we put that in the middle, because it goes both towards the safety aspect, to educate yourself on safety, and then also to educate yourself on conservation. Spearfishing is a selective sport. It's not something where you're going out with a net or dragging a lure through the water and hoping that whatever falls into your net or bites onto your hook. You're down there in the fish's environment, looking at what you want and saying, okay, that's the one that I want right now, and then you harvest that animal. That being said, we want our members to be educated enough to understand that you're now holding a piece of technology, or not even holding, gosh, you have carbon fins, a carbon gun, You've got your low volume mask. Like you've got all this technology on you that sort of levels or gets you closer to a level playing field with your quarry. So don't go down there and just destroy a reef and come back with a stringer full of 60 fish that you're not going to eat. So we push those I guess spearfishing morals in a way to try to create better sportsmen in our club, to, like you were talking about, to get the public perception and the public understanding of what a spearfisherman is, to raise that, to get people to look at us and say, oh, those guys are helping out. Those guys are being safe. Those guys are an asset to the environment, not something that's just taking advantage of it.
And then the last one, sorry, you kind of, I guess, introduce into the conservation aspect of it. Is there? Let me go back to safety real quick, just for those people who are diving in like Southern California, who are not diving in the clear waters of Guam and Fiji and Hawaii and all this other stuff. Do you guys really follow the one up, one down here when, like, in the kelp forest where the water might not be the best viz, maybe 15 feet?
California, you have to act differently in California. It's not like you said, you're not going to be able to keep eyes on your diver at all times. And really the way that you have to handle one up, one down is to communicate. You have to say, all right, when you're up and you're about to do your breathe up before your dive, you have to say, okay, I'm going to go down and I'm going to check out this side of reef and follow it around, so your top partner has an idea of where you should be. Top partner also needs to have an understanding of you as a diver. All right, he's normally a 45, 55 second diver. So you got your dive watch, and when they go down, you start watching the time, making sure. And if you get to 58, minute 2, minute 5, now is when you're going to start getting a little bit, worried and heading towards where your diver should be. You can never have a perfect scenario, really, in any dive. Even if you're in a 100-foot visit Guam, like, you're never going to have a perfect scenario. Really, what it boils down to in our local area is being able to have an understanding of how to communicate and how to manipulate the safety rules into a way that fits the environment that you're in. And here, the way that you do that is through communication and understanding of your dive partner.
Do you recommend that new divers use a float line, like in these kind of conditions here in Southern California, or do you think a reel is totally fine? Because I've heard guys recommend the float line just because you can't see where they are on the bottom, so at least you have an actual piece of equipment that goes from where you are to where they are, even if they might be down the ways a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it all boils down to personal preference. I do like the idea personally of having a float line as a marker. They even sell those, what are they called? The kelp carrots, that at the end of your line, it'll be sort of standing a little bit vertically. If you're in the kelp, it's just, I wouldn't recommend a very new diver dive in the kelp to begin with. I would definitely say to get some time under your belt before you go kicking around in the PV kelp forest, especially on a thick year.
Where were you when I first got started? I'm pretty sure my first day I did it absolutely totally wrong. I got all my gear, never used it, went on Spearboard, found a post by a 5-year-old post with a guy's phone number on it, texted him. It ends up turning to be my buddy now, like really good buddy Darren. But he was like, "Oh yeah, come out." He's like, "You've been diving before?" And I, at that time I was like, "Yeah." Not really. And then he basically takes me to PV, and I didn't even understand the concept of kelp. I tried to swim through it on the surface for an hour, only to find out there's tunnels underneath that you can just dive down 2 feet and go out and go under. But it's just like, so I 100% agree with you. Don't go to the kelp forest right out the gate. It's dumb.
And not only that, I mean, you'll just frustrate yourself, and maybe you'll frustrate yourself to the extent where you don't want to be part of the sport anymore. And that would be a shame. Aside from the safety aspect of it, just like make sure, just give yourself the best opportunity to gain some comfort in the sport first. And, being in on a thick year in the PV kelp forest, trust me, I was there with you, and not literally, but
in spirit, for sure.
In spirit, I was there with you in that thick kelp forest, struggling for my first year. But yeah, I mean, I guess the simple answer is it really boils down to, as far as float line versus reel goes. Yeah, I could see having a float line as a marker being a very good safety protocol for someone who's new.
Going back to what you were talking about with education, I think it's really awesome that you guys have, the ability to share different gears, and you have kind of, I'm guessing, like little mini presentations that you're giving to your club members. How does somebody who's not maybe affiliated just yet with the club kind of learn some of this education? Do you guys like have a YouTube channel? Do you guys put this out anywhere? Are you going to in the future?
Well, so we are in the future. We're already collecting all the video now of all of our club meetings. We're just we're still trying to find someone to help us out with time to put it all together and get it up on a YouTube channel. But all of our meetings are public. Our monthly meetings are held on the third Thursday of every month, so you don't have to be a member to come to them. And all of our main education happens at those meetings. We do everything ranging from like at the big, right before tuna season, we'll have, one of the big tuna guys like Dave Plossel, or Bill Mack, or, Richie Balta. We'll ask some of them to come by and talk about their thoughts on Paul Romanowski, on chasing tuna, and then really tell our guys, give them pointers. We also do sort of off the wall things. I did a presentation for the club. I think it was sometime last summer on how to harvest and eat giant sea kelp. Like, it's amazing. I didn't know, and I was diving all the time in kelp, and I'm like, I wonder what I can do with this. So I started calling biologists up and down the West Coast, talking to them, talking to people like Hank Shaw, who's hunt, gather, cook, just talking to a lot of people and gathering this information and putting it together. And we put together a presentation on, what are the regulations? Because believe it or not, there are regulations for giant kelp. How you gather it, how you find what's good kelp, bad kelp, and how you use it in your meals. And it was a really, at first it was one that I took a lot of hell for. Like, people were like, "You serious? You're going to tell us about kelp?" And then everybody that was at the meeting I brought a bunch of samples, was eating it, loving it, asking questions. And thereafter, I've actually been invited to other clubs to give that same presentation to their membership, because it just turns out it's badass. And this upcoming month, we're having another similar to that. He's an ex-board member, Brian Asahi. He and I are doing a series throughout the year on trash fish and sort of taking the stigma away from them. So this month, we're going to be presenting on opaleye. And the whole idea is to round out our Spearos into, all right, we understand when you go diving, you want to go find a yellowtail, you want to find a white sea bass, you want to find, fill in the blank. But maybe you don't find them. Do you go home without dinner that night? Well, no. You're surrounded by a bunch of delicious things. Take a couple opaleye, have dinner, and so that's what our February meeting is going to be this year. Is how to properly take, care for, and prepare opaleye.
I feel like you have a direct connection into my brain. I've had these exact same thoughts, because my first fish I ever shot was an opaleye, and I got so much flack for it. And in reality, it's like I feel like there are no such thing as trash fish if you know how to prepare them right.
Well, the whole thought is to call it the Trash Fish series, but really the intent is to remove that stigma from them altogether.
100%. And I think for the opaleye, it's just their stomachs stink. And just as long as you don't cut open their stomach, it's a great fish.
Right, exactly.
And maybe soak it in some vinegar if you need to, but
got them right away and you're good to go.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Going into the conservation aspect, which I think right there is a perfect testament that you guys are kind of breaking the mold, per se. It's not everybody needs to catch a yellowtail. Not everybody needs to catch a grouper. It's like they're great fish. It's definitely worth shooting a couple for the year, putting them in your freezer, or eating them right away. But there's just so much other stuff that we can be like diversifying our palates and being kind of more connoisseurs of the refrigerator ocean that we have out there. But I like the idea of kind of having educated members in our society who can kind of push back when there's like unnecessary regulations per se, or maybe, stand up to when corporations or whatever aren't doing the right thing. So I would love to hear your kind of thoughts on how like Spearos and fishermen in general can kind of start banding together to kind of like keep the sport alive, keep our environment healthy, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so one of my own personal long-term goals as a director of the club is to build a community of communities, somewhat of a federation of voices of interested parties. We as spear fishermen and hook and line fishermen and everybody have a vested interest in making sure that our ocean environment where we ply our sport is happy and healthy. And I don't think that conservation means shutting down, and I don't think that conservation means do not harvest. I think what conservation means is do it responsibly, do it knowledgeably, and use what you're taking. Like learn how to make fish bone broth. Learn how to use the collars of your yellowtail. Learn how to use as much of that animal as possible so you can get the most bang for your buck possible. And in my opinion, that is the true essence of conservation. It's not shutting things down. And so that has a lot to do with the education aspect of our club, is teaching everybody. This is how you properly care for what you're taking for, understand how much you need, and only take that amount. Like we put together a trip to Baja here coming up. We've got at one location, we've got 48 total people going, spread over 2 weekends. There's 24 going one weekend, 24 going another. And, I'm going to bring down my deep fryer. I'm going to bring down the vacuum sealer. I'm going to bring down, all of these different things. So right on site there, we can say, all right, you've just filleted your grouper. Don't throw that head away. Drop it in the deep fryer. Don't throw those bones away. Here's the turkey fryer filled with water. Let's make some broth. We'll freeze it. We'll take it home. You're going to use everything that we're taking, so you're not wasting anything. And I think in that way, not only is it you're reducing the waste, but people will start noticing that, and people will start understanding that we as hunters and sportsmen are not a bunch of drunk rednecks drinking Coors Lights and pissing on animals. That's not what we do. That's when I first started dating my girlfriend, she hated hunting. But that's because she had no idea what it was. She thought we were drunken rednecks pissing on animals, dead animals. But then when she saw how much care I took with everything I brought home and how I fed the household and how I didn't really waste anything, she started to come around and understand that, wait a minute, sportsmen really do have a vested interest in what they're doing and really, really do care about being out there and taking care of the environment that they're out in.
Well, I'm not going to lie. I was one of those people. I remember vividly. I had friends growing up who were super into hunting. And I always, for whatever non-educated reason, would always just fight them.
Yeah.
Always came out saying, like, how dare you, yada, yada. And it wasn't even until recently, like, I think Joe Rogan infused his hunting stuff into me. But it's like, I finally got one. It's like I finally have my hunting license. Like, I'm excited. It's like spearfishing actually was my gateway path to hunting, because I was like, I always loved to fish. I always loved to consume my fish that were legal to take, and to then go down to, like, say, Baja or go here locally and take home and learn how to properly fillet, learn how to use the fish like you're saying. Then that opened up to be like, why would I then justify going to a grocery store where I know the animal was in its own feces or in like a factory farm or whatever, to not go harvest a wild boar, which might be an invasive species and is actually better to take, and it actually tastes amazing. These kinds of things. I think you're also part of that Windward Westward group.
Yeah.
How's that going? Because I think that I haven't been to one of their meetings yet, but I think that is awesome concept.
So they've got a meeting coming up on the 10th, February 10th, at Allman Surf Shop in Costa Mesa, and those guys are great. It's funny. The majority of those guys are like you. They're not hunters, but they want to be. They've sort of somewhere along the way heard a flicker of something that interested them, that made them want to learn more about it, and they come together. And others, like there's me and there's several others. I've got a 17.5 cubic foot freezer in my garage that I fill with my own harvested meat and eat throughout the year. Like, we don't buy too much protein in this house. So at the last one I went to, I brought, I did, about 4 or 5 pounds of elk backstrap that I sous vide. I sat in the sous vide for, 3 or 4 hours, and then took down there and put on a cast iron skillet and gave it to everybody. And, it's like better than any filet mignon that you'll ever have. People get to see that, and they get to try it, and everybody gets excited like you are. And that group, from Windward Westward, they focus on everything hunting, but it seems like the questions that come about are more centered around land hunting. So what they're doing is helping people along. Like, here's a checklist of things that you need to do to become a California hunter. Here's how you go and do those things, and really sort of giving people the tools that they need to go and figure it out. They're a great group of guys and girls. Yeah.
That's awesome. Are you going to be doing, I guess you already are, but is that going to be more of a focus going forward also with the OC Spearos, to like how they're doing all the checklists and all the stuff for the land? You guys are going to be like, this is kind of everything for the ocean.
Yeah, it's a little bit easier for the ocean though. Like, right, like you get your fishing license and your ocean stamp and you're good to go. And then, during lobster season, you get your report card. Whereas with hunting, there's tons of different hoops that you have to jump through, and that's mainly because you're dealing with firearms. So, we send out to our members and remind them every time, like, all right, turn in your lobster report cards. Go get your lobster report cards. Hey, it's a new year. Don't forget your fishing license, things like that. But really, the ocean is a lot less, as far as the licensing standpoint, a lot less regulated than the land would be.
Going back to your point about the hunting and how much kind of like education you need before you even get the opportunity to hunt, while I was taking the test recently, I was like, this is hilarious that you can essentially buy all this gear for the ocean. You have a gun. I know it's more of like a bow and arrow underwater, but you then have to like go down to Baja or to your local spot, hold your breath, go down 60 plus feet, shoot things that could potentially have like an actual animal eat you. And yet you just have to buy a fishing license.
Right.
You don't have to go through firearm training, anything. Even archery stuff, you have to go through a special class for land stuff. Yeah. I was just laughing. Not that I'm asking for any more regulations.
It's because, like Cheryl, my girlfriend, when she first met me and I told her about spearfishing, she didn't tell me for like a week or two, but she honestly thought like I was going to the beach and like throwing spears at fish. She had no, and I don't think that's unique to her. A lot of people just have no concept of what spearfishing is, period. So I think that probably has a lot to do. We're still pretty off the radar.
Absolutely. I didn't even really understand what it was until I was getting PADI certified. And one of the instructors was FII. He was at, I think, the Fathom Mears. And as soon as he showed me the picture of this 70-pound white sea bass that he caught after only been diving for, I think he was relatively new, maybe like a year or two, I was like, I want that. I need to get that in my life. How do I, at that time, I was like more behind the computer for years doing like startup companies. And I was like, I need to go back to manhood. I need to go get my own food. It'd be great.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So going back to what you were talking about with the kelp, did you read the book Eat Like a Fish?
I did not. No.
Well, he's the guy, I think it's Bren Smith, who is he started another nonprofit called Green Wave, and they're trying to get more people into kelp farming. He was a commercial fisherman for 30 years, I think. Just saw the witnessing of the dredged nets, all the nets kind of stuff, the long lining, and eventually realized that actually growing kelp, like even just right off our coast, and Baja is like one of the best places to do it. He does it on the East Coast, is just untapped. And it's so nutritious. It's so good for you, in this right amount of quantities.
With the giant kelp, one of the greatest things I learned about it is that California giant kelp has the highest concentration of glutamate of any plant in the world. And glutamate is the G in MSG. So you don't get the MS part, the monosodium, which is really bad for you. You just get basically pure glutamate. And glutamate is essentially 100% umami, like the flavor umami. So what I did with a lot of it was I took about I don't know, it was like 5 or 6 pounds of wet kelp, and I dried it, and then I took the leaves and I put them in a NutriBullet and blended it up until it became like the finest powder that you can imagine. And I put that powder in almost every dish that I make that includes a sauce, and it doesn't have any sort of ocean flavor or anything like that. All it does is puts a magnifying glass on every flavor that's in the dish. So I don't even tell my family, like when I'm cooking, I don't tell them that it's in there because they'll be like, gross, seaweed. I just put it in there, and it's almost like it puts an Instagram filter on the flavors and just makes everything look more awesome. And I mean, I had thought about another club member, Darville McBride. He tried it, and he's like, dude, we got to do this. Like, we got to package this and sell this. Like, it's so good. And so, yeah, I'll definitely have to look that book up for sure. You said Eat Like a Fish.
Eat Like a Fish. I was actually hardcore looking at trying to start a kelp farm. That's how much but California, it's a total disaster if you wanted to do anything. Regulation-wise, I think the only person or only company that was able to do anything here in the last like 8 years has been Catalina Sea Ranch, and they were able to get a special license because there's like a certain zone in like near Long Beach that is federal, so you can get like an Army Corps of Engineering waiver, and they're doing mussels because it's a cash crop, but it's like there's 0 places that wouldn't take a decade and millions of dollars to be able to try and get a kelp farm. I'm just like, you can't even see them. Like, you can be making so much like actual food, making money. You can be doing a whole bunch of things, but you just can't even utilize the space.
And during the peak growing season for giant kelp, they grow anywhere from 12 to 16 inches a day.
I know.
It's just, you could replenish your crop every couple weeks.
They sequester more carbon than like a sequoia tree.
Yeah.
Like, it's like insane to me. And we're just like, oh no, you can't do it.
Yeah, you can't do that. Yeah, I'd probably say it's bad for the environment, even though it's really...
It makes more fish. Like, legitimately, more people are catching like big yellows and all this stuff in that zone where they have that mussel farm just because it's a structure.
Yeah, exactly.
And most people don't understand that you need structure to have safe zones for eggs and stuff like that to harvest without getting eaten. But so it's like if you make kelp forests and whatever, you could just have more fish because they reproduce, and more scallops and more whatever. It's just nuts to me.
Yeah, you're totally right.
Then going to this concept of like eating the entire fish. Have you read the book, The Whole Fish?
No.
Man, you're just like a trendsetter, dude. Like, you're like right on top of the trends without even knowing like the books that are started. I love it, dude. You're like a visionary. That book is by one of the world-renowned. He's a young dude. I think he's like my age, 30, in the low 30s. He's out of Australia, but he basically wrote the Bible on every way to utilize every piece of fish. I think he utilizes 96% of all fish that come into his restaurant.
All right, I'm definitely gonna buy that one too.
Get that one.
Whole fish, Eat Like a Fish.
What happened?
I said the Whole Fish and Eat Like a Fish. I'll get both.
There you go. I think I just gave you some books to read.
Yeah, hey, I love it. I'm always trying to learn more.
That's awesome. Do you have any resources, podcasts, books, YouTube channels that our listeners would love to know about?
I mean, I listen to yours. I listen to Spear Factor with Brett Whitman. The Spear actually just came back on after, Roman, after the longest time he hadn't released one. He released a new one, I think about a month ago. His is always really interesting. But as far as Spear specific, there's really not a lot out there. There's a lot on YouTube that you can watch for, fish porn. Youngbloods, Daniel Mann. Those are really good ones, for fish porn to watch. But really, and I'm not trying to toot the club's horn, but the reason that I push the club so much to create content and to create stuff for our members is because I just don't find a lot out there. And so we're sort of creating it whole cloth to try to, build the sport, build awareness, build education to get people out there and get people knowing about it.
I'm glad you called it fish porn, because at the end of the day, I have the exact same sentiments. Like, at some point, you just don't care to watch that specific 20th yellowtail to get shot, you know, or that, you know, whatever fish that they're targeting. I'm trying to add more commentary. At least I've been trying to tell all my spearfishing buddies, you should be teaching while you know, are showing the video, right? So it's like maybe you say you're spedoing here because there's a certain rock structure, so that when a newbie watches, they know what they're looking for, which will cut the time of like getting better.
You hit it right on the nose, because I think that as you start gaining more experience in the water, you start knowing what to look for. So when you're watching the videos, you know, you're watching it through two lenses, you know, A, the porn lens, and B, through the, okay, so let's say, you know, like you're saying, yellowtail. All right, let's look at what the surrounding area might be. And sure, you may not get any sort of, well, I guess you could, if there's plants around, you could see which way is the current moving, which, you know, where are the fish coming from. And you, like, I really starting to watch videos through both eyes. It's sort of like when for land hunting, in the entire off season, you're doing a lot of digital scouting, right? Like you're using your OnX to, you know, fly around in your little digital drone and find different features that might create an opportunity for animals. And you know, you can do a similar thing with the YouTube videos online. But I really like your idea of, yeah, why not throw some commentary on top, like, of what it is, instead of just the ubiquitous German techno music that somehow everybody has to put on every spearfishing video.
I mean, in a perfect world, the way I envisioned a lot of this content would be like, I would see the whole. Okay, here's a good question: how do you get around? Because I know a lot of the guys, the legacy older guys, would be like, you can't do a lot of. I guess you can. You don't want to burn spots, right? I guess my question is, first off, how do you not burn spots? You get a whole bunch of new guys in, and people are like, oh, that's my spot. I spent so many times going out by myself for the years that I found it. I'm not going to share it. How do you get that flipped?
Well, I don't think that we should be giving out spots, just giving them out. What I think we should be doing is giving people tools to find those spots. Like, teach them, you know, this is the type of structure you want to look for. This is how you read tides. This is how you read current. Keep track of temperatures. You know, give yourself a dive logbook that every time you dive, get out, write down the temperature, write down what the tides were doing, write what you saw, and it's just over time start going back and reading that information, and you will start seeing patterns emerge. Because, you know, animals aren't idiots. You know, the fish aren't idiots, but they're also not brilliant. They follow a lot of patterns. They have their own preferred means of living. And a lot of that boils down to is, it's, you know, they want to minimize the caloric outtake and maximize the caloric intake. So if you find ways to read the environment around them and look at the area through their eyes, then you can teach the new guys about that, then they can go on their own and do their own on-the-ground research, try spots. Does this fit what I've learned should be in this area? And if it does, great. Did I see it? Awesome. If not, move on. Try the next. So I think that you could do it both ways. I think we just need to empower people with the tools, but not necessarily with the specific, not the end point, just the road to get there.
Well, I can tell you firsthand that I want those tools. I have no clue on them. I can't wait till you guys put that out there, because I'm still going to the same spots or relying on a buddy to take me to different areas.
Come to any club meeting. And I've never seen anybody at any of our club meetings look down their noses at anyone. Like, if someone, plenty of times you get people saying, hey, like, how do I, like, what spot, where should I dive? And I've never heard anybody say, oh, go here. I've never heard it say, but what I do hear is, hey, hop on Google Earth, put it on satellite, and start looking for rock piles. Start there, you know, or, hey, you know, this week we've got some, you know, let's say it's summertime. This week we've got some pretty big tidal shifts coming out. You want to find your yellowtail, find your rock piles, look for a big tidal shift, get out in front of the upcurrent side of that rock pile and see what you see. You know, things like that they will be helping people out with. And I really think that's the right way, because then you end up with a community of people who own their knowledge as opposed to people who are fed their knowledge.
I like that. That's better than some of the things I saw early on in the spearboard stuff where it was like, go to this MLPA and shoot as many restricted fish as possible, and then show it to your game warden when you come out to your car.
So the answer that I always hate is like when you get somebody who maybe doesn't understand the decorum of how you interact with somebody with a fish photo is, hey, where'd you shoot that? And you get the ocean or the Pacific. It's like, don't be a dick, you know, like, come on, you don't want to discourage people from it. There's only one way that our sport is going to get better, and that's by growing. I mean, look, how many, you go out during the summer off the California coast, how many people are out there dragging lures? Yet we still have amazing yellowtail. We still have amazing dorado. We've got a bluefin run that's been around for what? This is hopefully coming up on our 7th, 8th season. You know, like, yes, you don't want to put too much pressure on one fine point spot, but come on, you know, help people out. Our community has its own ecosystem, right? Like you can't just have it be you and only you, because then the ecosystem falls apart. You gotta have the new guys coming up. You gotta be able to have them coming in and buying the product to feed the brands who are pushing the sport. And without that, the whole thing just falls apart.
You seem very driven to be able to go into the director's role really quickly. How did you find that drive? Like, how do you? I guess a lot of people might be thinking like, man, you're super driven. Can you put some of that Mamba on us? You know that.
So I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. You know, I like to say that aside from maybe like a high school job, I've never had a job. You know, at about 12 years old, my family owns an apparel business. They started in 1992. And that would have made me about 11 years old. And I had a job for the family business at 11 years old. And there was a period of about a year or two in high school, and I'm like, I'm not working for the family anymore. I'm going to go get my own job. And so I worked at a pizza parlor or something stupid like that. But I've never had a boss. Like I've always been in a position where it was just sort of like you have to do it your own. You know, I've owned multiple businesses. And it's you know, it's shit or get off the pot. And getting off the pot means going broke, which I've done. I've gone flat broke before, making mistakes. And it's just, if there's anybody who's out there interested in finding a way to be ambitious, the only advice that I have is embrace failure. Is do not ever shy away from failure. If you're failing, that means you're doing something right. It means that you're trying. It means that you're out there trying something new. And every failure that I've had, I've learned something, and it makes the next thing that I've tried that much better, you know, and maybe one of these days I'll actually become successful. But it's, you know, it's finding a way to be resilient and never, ever taking no for an answer, ever taking no for an answer. When people tell me that, oh, that sounds too hard, or, oh, you know, I don't know, that just seems like it's going to be a lot of work. I know I'm on the right track. I know that that's something that I got to pour gas on. And I don't know, like I don't like to sit, and I don't like things not being made around me, and I don't like having my hands on all those things, helping things get built. I don't know. I don't know if it's genetic. I don't know if it's, you know, nature or nurture. Like, I don't know if it came from my family. I don't know. All I know is that I have this mindset that doesn't allow me to take no for an answer.
One thing that I've learned as well is you have to fall in love with the process and not be fixated on the end result.
Right.
Because the end result is the only thing that's really not within your control. But the grind is within your control, and hopefully if you do the right things with the right strategy, it could be successful. But
trying to focus on an endpoint is actually, I see as unhealthy. I knew someone in the past who she had started her own clothing line, and she was always saying, well, I gotta become successful. I gotta make this business successful. I have to focus 100% of my time on making this business successful. And the point that I was always trying to make is, what is successful? What does that mean? Is it you're doing $1 million in sales? Well, then once you're doing $1 million, you're going to want to be doing 2. Is it $2 million? Well, then you're going to want 5. If it's 5, you're going to want 10. Like, Like, you can't ever say, you can't set these artificial goals in front of you, because that's as far as you'll aim. What you have to do is, like you say, you have to understand that success is never an end point. Success is a process that just does not ever end. So if you can teach yourself to weather the storms and to enjoy the wins, and to, with every step that you take, learn something, whether it's something that you did right or something that you did wrong. And if it's something you did right, pour gas on it. If it's something you did wrong, pivot away. You just have to keep, along that process.
I agree with you. I think having monetary or material endpoints is a disaster, because they should be used more for milestones, like for you, kind of as like a litmus test to see if you're doing the work. But your end goal should be something greater than yourself.
Right.
So whether that's like eliciting change, causing a movement, having a legacy, whatever that is for you, it's all personal. That's how I think for me. It's like when I started Cast and Spear, it wasn't like, oh, I can't wait to sell this thing for $7 million. It's like, no, not at all, right? It's like, it was, I want to make sure there's fish for future generations.
Right.
The way to do that is you got to have fish. You got to make sure people are educated so that they don't take too many fish, or they have better policies. All the XYZ, it just trickles down. Sure. And I'll find what those are where I can help and where I can't. But it's like, it's bigger than myself. So.
Yeah, one of my main milestones throughout everything that I've done throughout my career in both professional and hobby, I consider the OC Spearos as something like it has become a much bigger deal now, but I still view it more as a hobby. None of us get paid, so I have to view it that way. But always milestones along the way is whatever I'm doing now, that at some point working the process through to where I make myself irrelevant. So trying to constantly put myself out of a job. And that's how I know I'm being successful, is because I'm building an entity or a structure or a product that doesn't necessarily need me, so that I can keep the entity growing higher and higher with new and more things. And I know that everything that I've done before is on a solid foundation that doesn't rely necessarily on me as an individual.
Well, I think the next time you come on this podcast, we're going to have to do a deep dive into entrepreneurship and business, because I can go on this stuff for hours. And I know we're coming up on time. But I want to ask one final question. I ask this to everybody, and it's, why do you fish?
So, spearfish specifically, multiple reasons. One, I enjoy the idea of bringing home my own food with my own hands, and now basically my entire arsenal of guns, except for one, are guns that I've built myself. So it's food that I'm getting on my own, with my hands, with tools that I made on my own. There's a satisfaction that I gain from that. Another thing that I always joke around with Cheryl, my girlfriend, is it's pretty damn awesome to be out in the water where it's totally silent and nobody to talk to, nothing to worry about, no work to worry about, being in a silent, being so focused, laser focused on, the task at hand, that it's meditation to me. It's, when you really get into your dive rhythm and you're feeling your heartbeat, and you're consciously manipulating your heartbeat slower, and you're paying attention to the fish that's around you, you're paying attention to the environment that's around you, that how everything is working together, you get this sense of meditation that, it's better than any therapist couch that I can imagine. And it's just, not to sound too ridiculous, but I mean, it's magical. It is just the effect that it has on your mind and body is amazing. Having that refreshed feeling every time you get out of the water is what makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, I tell my friends that it's active meditation, because I've done a lot of the float tanks, and it's crazy when you're in a total isolation environment where you can finally hear your mind talk. It's loud in there.
Yeah.
And that's all the self-doubt, like all the things that once I tell people, it's the gap between your thoughts is peace. And to me, it's how long is that gap dictates how much peace you might be able to conjure up. Because if it's firing crazy, you don't really have.
Sounds to me like you've read Siddhartha.
I have a couple times. I love that book. It's a great book.
Yeah.
Great book. Do too much reading, man. I need to be out in the world.
It's on the water.
I need to be out in the water. Well, Brad, appreciate it, man. This has been super, super fun and helpful. I know I got a lot out of it. I know the listeners have got a lot out of it. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
Well, that does it for this episode of the podcast. I hope you found it enjoyable and you learned something. Brad, thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom. I plan to do some shout outs for those who leave a review on iTunes. So the first one is by Whitman Brett. I have a feeling that's Brett from Spear Factor. And he says, I really like how you managed to have such a wide variety of guests with something to offer both traditional line fishermen and spear fishermen. Thanks for that awesome comment, Brett. Much appreciated. If you haven't listened to his podcast, definitely check it out. It's Spear Factor. You can find it on iTunes as well. But if you could do me a huge favor and you want to shout out, please leave me a comment and a rating on Apple Podcasts. I check them all. And until next time, guys, stay safe in the water. I'll catch you guys later. Bye.